All right, we are live streaming our meeting. Welcome, everybody. It is so nice for us to be together for another awesome episode of Cooking with Hazzan at Herjik. If you are here on Zoom, welcome. If you are here on YouTube, welcome. We're so excited to have Stefanie Kravitz-Doloboff here with us today to share some breakfast favorites. And so I'm going to spotlight Stefanie's video for everyone. And I'm going to ask Stefanie just to introduce yourself and tell us what you're going to be making today.
Hey, good morning. My name is Stefanie, and I own a special events bakery called Fresh Flowers LLC. And this morning, we are going to make almond blueberry muffins, which are dairy-free and gluten-free. And then we are going to make an asparagus, pepper, and zucchini frittata. So the first thing you want to do is preheat your oven to 350 degrees. The other thing you want to do before we get started is make sure you wash your hands and you also wash your ingredients. So for the blueberries, whenever I wash fruit, I like to dry them on a paper towel because you really want to get rid of all of the water so that it doesn't water down your recipe. So the first thing you're going to do is line a standard muffin tin with 12 muffin liners, which you can buy in the grocery store. These happen to be rainbow, but you can use anything. And you want to use, the recipe calls for almond meal, but I use almond flour. This almond flour happens to come from Costco, and it happens to be my favorite almond flour. It is also kosher for Passover. Trader Joe's also sells an almond flour, and they also sell almond meal. So you want to start with 2.5 cups of almond flour.
Stefanie, what's the difference between almond flour and almond meal? Are they a different texture?
Yeah, almond flour is a little finer. Almond meal is a little coarser. It's a little more of just ground almonds. This is just ground almonds too, but the almond flour is a little bit finer, but you can use either one. It doesn't really make any difference at all. That's perfect. I have just 2.5 cups. Okay, 2.5 cups, and then you're going to add a teaspoon of cinnamon. These happen to be excellent for spice jars because they're really narrow, so you can fit it right in, but any measuring spoon will do.
Where did you get those? That's awesome.
We got them at a cooking store, which you can probably find them online, but they really are terrific for any kind of jars. Okay, so you want to whisk the almond flour and the cinnamon together just until the cinnamon is mixed in. And this is going to get mixed multiple times, so it doesn't have to be perfect. That's pretty good. And then you are going to separate 5 eggs. I've already done 3, and I prefer to just take an egg, crack it, a little nicer than the way I just did it, and I basically go back and forth until I get rid of all the egg white. You can also use an egg separator, which I'll show you right now, which again, you can get, this is a plastic one, and the yolk, the idea is you crack it and the yolk stays on top. This is a very old-fashioned one, but it does the exact same thing. So you just crack the egg, make sure you don't get any shell, and then you're going to pour it into the egg separator. Just like that. And now you want to put a third of a cup of sugar with your egg yolks. So it's 5 eggs separated. A third of a cup of sugar and a teaspoon of vanilla. My oven just preheated. That was the ding. Let me turn this off for a second. Okay, so you're going to beat this for 3 minutes. I'm using just a regular electric mixer with beaters, and you want to beat this until it gets about double in size, which will be 3 minutes. And just so you can see how long it takes, I do it on very high speed. You'll also see that right now the yolks are very yellow, and once it doubles, it's going to get lighter and lighter.
Stefanie, could you use a stand mixer or do you prefer a hand mixer?
You can, but for this, because it's so little, there's not a lot of liquid in here. A stand mixer with a whisk will put more air than you need, and it's also not a lot of ingredients, so it's gonna just go all around the side, as opposed to this, which is very concentrated in the bottom of the bowl. It's already gotten much lighter in color. So you do this for 3 minutes, and you're gonna do the egg whites also for 3 minutes. But they're gonna be very different, as you see. This is not gonna get stiff, it's just gonna get bigger in volume and lighter in color. And this really adds lightness to the muffins. And one of the beauties of this recipe is that if you're anything like me, after 1 or 2 days of matzah, I'm pretty much done with matzah. So the great thing about this recipe is there are no other ingredients besides the almond flour and eggs, which really lighten it up. And there is one other. That's pretty good. Now look at the color. I don't know if you could see if it's too light, but this is much, much lighter than where we started. And I'm just going to rinse these off.
Do you know when they're done? What's like a good sign?
Well, you want about double in size, which this has, and you could see the lightness of the color.
Perfect.
From where the very rich yellow of the original egg yolks. So you just, I'm going to rinse these. And now I'm going to with the egg yolks, I'm going to add the almond mixture with the cinnamon and a half a cup of applesauce. As soon as I find my half a cup. This is unsweetened applesauce, and you want to be sure you use unsweetened applesauce or your muffins are going to be way too sweet, because this whole recipe only has a third of a cup of sugar, and the applesauce really gives it moisture as well as taste, but it completely lightens up the muffins, as does beating the eggs yolks and the egg whites. So you want to mix this together until it's pretty well mixed. That's pretty good. And you'll see, it still feels very light when you mix it. Okay, now we're gonna do the egg whites. And the only thing you're gonna add to this is a half a teaspoon of kosher salt to the egg whites. And this you want to do also for about 3 minutes, but until you get stiff peaks, which the first thing you have is almond.
Stephanie, is this a recipe that you make every year for Passover?
Well, you know, I started when our son has celiac and he was diagnosed, remember exactly how long ago, but I started looking for gluten-free recipes, particularly around Passover, because he couldn't have matzah meal. Now you can find gluten-free matzah meal, and gluten-free matzah is in almost every grocery store, but a few years ago, those products were not available. And the beauty of this recipe is it's not any matzah meal, matzah cake meal, potato starch, any of the products that go into most Passover baking. It's, and the muffins are very easy and quick to make. This is pretty good already. If you can see, well, it's too hard to see because we have a skylight, but stiff peaks have already formed. So now what you want to do, as soon as I can get these out, you want to gently fold in half of the whites, which it doesn't have to be exact, but I'm just going to put about half of them into the almond mixture. And you want to gently fold it because you obviously don't want to smush the whites that you just so nicely beat and added air to. So you want to really just fold this together. And once this is pretty well together, you're going to fold in the second half of the egg whites. And I'm using a nonstick spatula. You can use a large spoon. And now it's really getting light. You can feel the egg whites have really made the batter super light. Okay, that's pretty good. And now you are going to add in your blueberries, which are nice and dry. And you want to add, the recipe calls for 1.25 cups, but because I really like a lot of blueberries in the muffins, I'm going to do more like 1.5 cups, which doesn't really change anything.
Do you also substitute a different berry if you wanted to do raspberries or blackberries?
Raspberries tend to fall apart in baking, but you certainly can. I actually haven't tried raspberries. Those would probably be good. Blackberries you could probably use, but you might want to cut them.
Blueberries are just the perfect size.
Blueberries are kind of perfect in muffins. especially with the almonds. Although raspberries and almonds is a good combination. I might try that next week when we have everyone here for Passover. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm going to throw in a few more blueberries so that we have blueberries in every muffin. Okay, and that's pretty good. So the easiest way to put these into the muffin tin, I'm just going to rinse my hands, is with a spoon. I actually am going to start with a, so here are the lined muffin tins. And you're just gonna, they don't really rise too much, so you can pretty much go close to the top. And you want to make sure that everyone has blueberries, obviously. Otherwise, they're not going to be such good blueberry muffins.
Have you ever used an ice cream scooper to get the dough out?
No, because this is a pretty sticky dough. You
Mm.
can try. But I actually prefer a teaspoon because you can control it a little better. And you can control how much you're putting in each one, which you
It's a
can
great
with an ice cream scooper too. This just needs a little more. And if you have extra batter, which sometimes there's a little extra batter depending on how much you fill them, you can make mini muffins out of them. But then you just have to watch the cooking time so they don't burn, because those will cook quicker because there's less in each one. Whoops, that one got a little mushed. Okay, we're almost there. This one's a little over. Okay, so now I'm just going to add a little more onto some of them, use up the batter. Okay, that's pretty even. One more blueberry. You don't want to waste the blueberries. Okay, so now you can just clean off any overflow because you don't want to bake it onto the muffin tin, although nothing really is going to go wrong. Okay, now you're going to take dry roasted, unsalted almonds, sliced almonds, and you're just going to sprinkle a few on top of each, and this adds a little color and some crunch to the muffins. And these are going to go in a 350-degree oven for 30 minutes. And because of the apples and the applesauce and the cinnamon, they smell unbelievably good while they're baking. Okay, that's pretty good. And lastly, you're going to take some demerara sugar, which you can also use a little brown sugar. You could also use sugar in the raw. And this really just adds a little more crunch, and it'll also brown a little bit. Add a little browning to the top, a little sweetness, and a little crunch.
So this type of sugar is like a thicker sugar crystal.
This is a raw. It's a cane sugar. You can buy this Domino brand, you can buy in any grocery. You can also buy it online. Or you could use sugar in the raw, which you can also buy, which is turbinado sugar. And they're both natural cane sugars. So this is how they look. And now they're going to go into the oven for 30 minutes.
Those look delicious. I'm coming over in a half an hour.
Okay, so now we're going to move on to the frittata, which by the time we're finished will be perfect timing for the muffins.
Looks like my family's going to have some muffins for Passover this year. Those look delicious.
They're really good, and they're a good snack, and they're also good for breakfast if you have a lot of people, which we're going to be a lot of people for Passover. So this is kind of the perfect thing to do.
I wonder if you can use the batter and maybe make a sweeter version with chocolate chips or with like sprinkles for kids, you know, those like little mini muffins.
I think you can adjust this very easily. I happen to not like chocolate in muffins. I kind of prefer a
fruit healthier version.
You could certainly try. I think that's a good idea. Okay, so for this frittata, you want to use a 9 by 13-inch glass baking dish. This is a Pyrex baking dish, which the recipe calls for glass. I'm sure you could use also a metal, but because it calls for glass and I happen to have one, that's what I'm going to use. So I have prepped everything, but again, you want to start with all of your vegetables washed and dry. So for the asparagus, you want to have 2 pounds of asparagus. Now, this asparagus is already washed, but in case you don't use asparagus often, the way that you clean asparagus, once it's washed, wherever you naturally, where it breaks is where the asparagus, the part you use is the part that whatever break, where it naturally breaks, that's the part of the asparagus you want to use. The ends you can get rid of. And for this recipe, you want to cut it into, I use pieces about that big because it's going to go into the entire dish. So again, 2 pounds of asparagus, and this has all been washed and cut. You want to blanch it in boiling water just for 1 minute. And while you're blanching it, you want to get ready an ice bath, because the minute you want to take it out, you want to stop the cooking. You can get rid of the sugar. So here's my ice bath ready as soon as we are done blanching the asparagus. You want to use either a saute pan or a frying pan, and this is 1 tablespoon of butter, which I'm just melting slowly. I have chopped this in a Cuisinart. These are 3 shallots, which you just want to chop. You can do it by hand or to save time, like I just did. You can throw it in the Cuisinart, which really makes it go much, much quicker. And you want to saute the shallots.
Stefanie, if you didn't have access to a shallot, would you suggest a yellow onion, a red onion, a white onion, any of the other?
They're all in the same family. You can buy shallots absolutely everywhere. So I don't, you can, shallot is in the onion family. I'm sure you can substitute either of those. So into this saute pan, I'm adding 3 shallots and 2, the recipe calls for yellow pepper, but I think it's prettier to use 3 different colors. So this is yellow, orange, and red pepper cut into strips and then half again. So
Beautiful.
you're gonna add this to the shallots.
We're tasting the rainbow with all these vegetables.
Well, that's what's pretty about this frittata. Not only does it taste really good, and it's perfect for, this frittata serves 12. So it's great when you have a lot of people. And the other really nice thing about a frittata is you don't need to serve it hot out of the oven. You can serve it room temperature. So you can make it ahead of time, which is also perfect, especially during a holiday when you've got a lot to bake and cook. It's kind of nice to have something you can serve at room temperature. Okay, so you're gonna saute your vegetables for approximately 10 minutes. And every once in a while stir so that they don't stick. And this is just to soften them before you put them in your frittata. Now, move some of the almond stuff out of the way. The applesauce we can get rid of. I thought this water was already hot. Okay, so obviously you want to start the water before you really get started, which I should have done that. And this is 10 eggs, which I have in to a stand mixer. And you can, again, you could use an electric mixer, or you could do it by hand, which will just take a little while, or you can use an old-fashioned egg beater. And I'm going to use the whisk attachment. Okay, that's good. And the recipe does not call for pre-cooking the zucchini, but I throw it in at the very end just to give it a little, to soften the zucchini a little. This zucchini is 1 zucchini that's been cut lengthwise and then into slices. And again, everything has been washed and dried. And while this is cooking, you're also going to cut up 3 scallions, which you want to use only the white and the very light green part. And this is 3 scallions chopped. And this is 3 tablespoons of parsley, which has already been chopped. You're going to add that in after your vegetables are added in.
I prefer one curly parsley over the flat leaf parsley.
I think it's a matter of taste. I'm using the curly just because that's what I have. I think you could use either of them.
We use the curly for our Seder plate, so I know we'll have plenty of that around the house.
Exactly. Okay, so this is almost boiling. And I think it's good enough for this reason to throw this in. Okay, so again, this is 2 pounds of asparagus. You're going to blanch it in boiling water for 1 minute. I'm throwing it in here. And I'm timing it for 1 minute. And this is starting to soften. Nicely. Adding my zucchini. And it's nice to use a saute pan with a slightly thicker side, so you don't have to worry about spilling anything, as opposed to a frying pan. Okay, now I'm going to take out the asparagus, and I'm actually using this, but you can drain it in the colander. This is just speeding without getting water everywhere. And you're going to immediately put this into the ice bath to stop the cooking. The asparagus, 2 more pieces. And I am just going to put this immediately in the ice. You just want to make sure that the ice is all around the asparagus. And you don't need to worry about the ice because you can drain this in a colander and run a little bit of warm water on it, and that will dissolve the ice if it hasn't dissolved just from the heat of the asparagus. So that's pretty good in its water bath. Let's check on our vegetables. So I'm just going to show you how this looks. These are starting to soften. And it smells really good. And this is probably almost ready to drain. You want to blanch it just for 1 minute. And you can feel this is starting to get really cold from the ice, which is perfect.
By blanching the asparagus, it allows you to keep that really bright green color on the asparagus.
Exactly. And it doesn't. Okay, so this is 10 eggs. And the recipe calls for half a cup. You can use cream. You can use half and half. And I actually used cream, a quarter cup of cream and a quarter cup of 1% milk. I'm not a huge cream fan. And we use 1% milk at my house. So mixing the two together is kind of perfect. And you just want to mix this up. That's pretty good. I'm going to turn this off. Just cool down for a minute before I put it in my eggs. Now I'm just going to drain this over the sink. I'm just getting rid of the big ice right now. Okay, all the ice is now gone. And now you want to look at the color.
Oh, it's a beautiful bright green, and they still have a crunch to them too, because you
Bright
only
green,
blanched them for a little
correct.
bit.
So now you just want to pat them dry. Oh, here's a little more ice. You want to pat this dry, or alternatively, you can just put more paper towel and get this nice and dry. Before you put it in your frittata, because you don't want it to get watery. And you're just going to let this dry a little bit. Okay, so into the frittata that now just has a half a cup of either cream or cream milk, half and half, whatever you'd like to use. You're going to add 1.5 teaspoons of kosher salt. And it's 10, even though that sounds like a lot, it is 10 eggs and a lot of vegetables. So if you want to use less salt, you certainly can. And I am going to also grind in some fresh black pepper. You're going to add parsley, 3 tablespoons of parsley. This one has the stem. Give this one more beat. Oh, I forgot to mention one thing. This needs to be buttered so that the frittata doesn't stick. And I find that the easiest way to butter any dish is with a little piece of wax paper, or you can use the wrapper from the butter. And you just want to make sure that the whole pan, up to the sides and in the corners, is buttered so it doesn't stick. This I already buttered, but I forgot to mention that at the beginning. So now you've got your eggs, your cream, parsley, and you're going to add your sauteed vegetables. And your dried asparagus, which is nice and getting nice and dry. Let's see if I can pick this whole thing up. No.
That was impressive.
Well, okay, so now you have peppers, zucchini, asparagus, parsley, eggs, salt, pepper. You're going to add in your chopped scallions, which there are 3 scallions. And because my family loves cheese, you can certainly leave this the way it is, or you could add, I've used Gruyere cheese, which is really nice with asparagus. This is a little more than half a cup, and I'm going to mix it in. You can use cheddar, you can use Parmesan, any cheese you want that will add a little flavor and melt. I'm sure you could use Monterey Jack too. So now you're going to pour this into your prepared pan. And not only does this taste really good, it looks beautiful when you serve it. And I am just going to add a little bit of cheese on top.
How many people does one of these frittatas typically feed?
12.
Great. It's amazing.
And today I'm actually going to test freezing it, which Hazzan, you and I had a little conversation before, but you certainly can freeze this. And since I'm going to freeze it already cooked, it's probably going to be just defrosted and then possibly warmed in an oven and possibly just served at room temperature. So the muffins still have 8 minutes to go, but this is ready to go into the oven. And I'm going to show you. This is a finished frittata. This I made half the recipe in an 8x8 glass dish. And just so you can see, it slightly puffs when baking. You want it a little bit brown on the edges, which you can just see this is a little bit brown on the edges. And the cheese is melted on top and the eggs are solid. There's no shaking. And I'm just going to cut a piece so you can see how it looks inside.
Power of TV that you have a done frittata. Oh, that looks beautiful.
And that's your finished frittata. And you bake this again at 350 for 35 minutes. This one I baked for 30 minutes because it's about half the size. I used half the ingredients. Let's just check on our muffins now. Oh yeah, they're starting to get nicely brown. So I can, do we want to wait, Hazzan, or do you want me to just show you how the muffins look?
Oh, well, if you have muffins that are already done, which I know you've been working hard over these past couple of days.
Unfortunately, we ate all the muffins that I've already made. So
Wow.
they only have 6 more minutes to go, but I can certainly show you.
Yes, and maybe you can share a story or two about some of your
Absolutely.
favorite Passover foods, or I know that there are other things that you make. Oh, those look delicious. And those are not even done yet.
No, they're not even done yet, but
Wow.
they'll be done in a few minutes. I
Have you,
also
I'm curious, have you ever made just like putting the muffin dough and make muffin tops? Right? Like I've done that before.
I do have.
You have a special pan, I'm guessing.
I do. This is the muffin top pan.
Wow.
And if you can see the width of these muffins, the width is probably a quarter or even less than a quarter of a regular muffin. So you get the effect of just the muffin tops. And I actually have a few recipes that are made for muffin tops, which is originally why I bought these pans, because everyone loves just the top of the muffin. So this pan is actually perfect for making muffin tops. And you can buy them. I know Williams-Sonoma sells muffin top pans. I'm not sure if Sur La Table does, but again, most cooking stores do sell them. And as I mentioned before, you can also do it in mini muffins. Oh, and that's another thing I forgot to mention. With the frittata, if you want to make individual little frittatas, you can, in the muffin tin, spray it with Pam, or you can use butter to line each one of the muffin pans. Let me see if I have another one here. There's only 6. I should have. Oh yeah, here. So here's a little 6 muffin pan. You can spray this or put a little butter on here. And you want to put your vegetables at the bottom, and the exact same mixture that you made for the frittata, you can pour over the vegetables, and you can bake these in the oven. And I think we actually shared one of the recipes, which is in the Hakol, for making muffin-sized frittatas, which are perfect for just a little snack bite, or you can serve them for hors d'oeuvres. And if you want, you can just top them with a little bit of chives, which just adds a little more color to the top. And they're really good. And you can also put a little Parmesan cheese on the top if you want, which again just makes it look a little more brown and crunchy.
Sounds delicious.
Yeah, they
Now,
are delicious.
I'm curious, why wouldn't you mix the vegetables into the egg mixture as you would with the bigger pan?
Because I think that with the size of it, I think it's just easier to that they don't all just sink to the bottom. I think this way, I'm not 100% sure, but I think it's because of the size of the muffin tin versus the open space of the.
You could probably also guarantee that each one's going to get the same amount of vegetables.
Correct. And you can, instead of just pouring it in, which you would, that
could be messy.
Another
could be very messy, yeah.
It would be messy. And this way, by putting the vegetables in, as you said, you can kind of put, like if you want asparagus and peppers in some, if you want to do zucchini and pepper in another, you can kind of make them however you want them to be in the end.
You could probably do like a frittata bar if you were doing something ahead of time and you had some kids helping you out. Maybe you could have all of the toppings lined up and have everybody make their own frittata. That would be very cool too.
You absolutely can. And you can switch the vegetables. Asparagus is perfect this time of year, but you could use other vegetables. You could certainly do spinach. And any other vegetable, as you suggested, switching onion for the shallots, you could do broccoli and cheddar. You could make.
I was just thinking broccoli cheddar is always a good combination, or like mushroom with Swiss cheese is also a good combo if you like that. Goat cheese.
There are a lot of different ones you can use. So when you asked about a family favorite recipe.
Yes, please.
Okay, so our family favorite recipe for Passover are meringues. And when we were little, my aunt used to make us meringues, and we used to think they were the best thing in the world. And they're very few ingredients, egg whites. I actually have a YouTube video on my Fresh Flowers website about how to make meringues. They're super simple. And when we were little, my aunt used to make them for us with chocolate chips and cornflakes. And obviously for Passover, you leave out the cornflakes, but chocolate chip meringues are our family favorite. And I make them every single Passover. And normally I make 3 or 4 cookie type desserts. And then I used to make a torte, a cake, Passover brownies, some other dessert. And we started to realize that nobody ever ate that, because everyone ate. I always make chocolate macaroons. I make chocolate chip meringues, double chocolate walnut cookies. And no one ever ate the cake or the other whatever I made. So I kind of learned my lesson and stopped doing that. But the first thing to go in our house are the meringues. So now I keep them hidden until I'm ready to serve them. And when my nephews were little, that's the first thing they used to grab. And I'd go to serve them, and half of them would be gone. And wherever we were for Passover, same story. So now I actually put them however I'm going to plate them and hide them in my house so that no one can get to them before we serve Passover. So that is our Passover meringue story.
I'm going to have to get that meringue recipe from you then.
Okay, so these are...
This looks beautiful. You're right. Those sliced almonds on top really are so beautiful and eye-catching.
Well, you know what? They really do add crunch. And let me turn the oven off. And they also add just a little more texture and flavor to it. I'm just going to let those cool. And there you go.
Thank you so much, Stefanie. Amazing.
Very welcome. And I hope everyone has a happy and a healthy holiday.
Yes, a happy and healthy holiday to you as well. I want to thank you for joining us today for Cooking with the Hazzan. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we will have another Stefanie Atias, who's going to be joining us, and she's going to be sharing a Sephardic stuffed cabbage recipe. So join us again tomorrow at 11. As always, you can check on our YouTube channel for all of our episodes.